After the sharp sell-off we saw on Friday, equities pulling back and Bitcoin sliding down 20% with it, Sunday brought a surprisingly strong rebound across the board. The question is now, is that just a relief bounce or is this the start of something bigger? Today's video, I'm going to break down what this move means for crypto and the broader market, what signals I'm watching into for the week ahead, and the key levels that could define the next leg of this cycle. My name is Paul Sampson. Welcome back to DataDash. Folks, if you haven't already, be sure to go to datadashpro.com and claim your seat in the DataDash Discord, as well as access to Nicholas Mertens' Dash report. Our seats are filling up fast. We're only offering up to 500 members currently. We're currently at 250 seats right now out of the 500 available. So there's 250 seats left if you're interested. After 500, we will be closing off signups. Now, this is where I put all of my analysis from short term to the long term, stock market outlooks, high risk, low caps, member only market updates, where I give out pretty much everything that you see here publicly, but well in advance or more in detail to the members ahead of time. There's also an included educational academy that I'm constantly updating. This is where you have all the tools, indicators, all the strategies that I utilize each and every day to attain an edge in this market. This is where I post things like the BNB breakout well in advance. This was back in May of 2025, where we were trading around the $600 level, showcasing that we were looking for a breakout towards 941, then respectively 1275 and 1400. Obviously, BNB is surpassing now the $1,200 level. That's just a glimpse, of course. I also noted almost every single major move in this market since the last few years. XRP breakout, over a 500% rally. The H-bar rally, over 700% back in the day. It was the Solana rally from $1 to well over 40 back in 2021, of course. And where all weekend long after this recent pullback on Friday, where I was calming members, just kind of breaking things down, showcasing that we'd let the dust settle a little bit. And then now we are on Monday, and it's almost like everything, for the most part, still a little bit pullback, but it's cooled off a little bit. So if you're interested, be sure to join at datadashpro.com. All right, folks. So last week, obviously, I was looking for a couple of things here. So as you all may know, I was pretty bullish around these regions here as we were coming down into these areas, as well as being bullish all the way back in April of this year when we were coming into the major tariff fears, okay? There were bullish setups pretty much all around us into these areas. And then again, when we came down to the 107 region, right, we were targeting a new shark harmonic, okay? This is the shark in question there. We had an area known as the hop, which was the most deep area, the deepest area, I guess you could say, that we could get to where this would still be a valid setup. We also had a couple of things all lining up with that 107 region there. And overall, we were targeting the main targets of the shark, which are these three right here. The 0.5 at 117,000, then 122 and 126, right? So all those targets have effectively been met. We had a huge meltdown to the downside. Now, also, I was pointing out the potential for a little short squeeze, right, that we were looking into taking us up to the $130,000 area. Now, that did not play out, and those shorts that I pointed out that were potentially setting up for the squeeze ended up taking control and dragging us all very much so down, right? So that's a lot of what added into that huge drop over the weekend, or as we started the weekend, basically. And if we take a zoomed out approach here versus just looking at the more local stuff, this AB equals CD setup, which you've seen me cover for multiple months now on this channel, even here at DataDash, was something I was looking to come into a completion around the end of September, right, the week of the 29th. I was targeting a little bit higher. Again, this is something that even ever since we put in this high, this setup was technically valid. So I knew that I was kind of, we were a little playing with a little fire here. And again, I will admit that I assumed that we were going to see one last little push up before a big meltdown like we had seen. And unfortunately, that did not come. We missed my main target area by about 4% up here. Again, targeted well in advance. However, not that that helps at the moment, but this setup here has two major targets, all right? So one of which being the 0.382, which again now is back at 106, where we effectively wicked down to and have gotten a bounce off of since. And technically speaking, this setup now, as far as a bearish setup goes, this is technically, it's utilized. It's already spent, I guess you could say. So we still have to be aware that the secondary target, however, is still something to be a note. So the question really is going to come down to now, are we seeing a bit of a little dead cat bounce where we're going to come up and put in a lower high essentially, and then come back and make another low into this region, more than likely over the next few weeks? Or is this coming down to this number one target of this setup going to just propel us higher, right? So it's the question at hand. Either way, I think that we have upside here, right? So we're looking at Bitcoin to get a push probably towards the 117 to $120,000 region. Potentially going to be just kind of coasting around there. The interesting part are the altcoins, right? So yes, over the weekend we saw extreme moves on the altcoins going into 80% plunges, only to be bought right back up. So realistically, the only person or the only people out there that were truly hurt, to the point where they lost all their money, is if you had any leverage behind these altcoins, which is something that I always say to not do. You don't need leverage with the altcoins. Honestly, you don't need leverage anywhere, but people are going to use it. I do use it as well. I utilize it more so to protect my capital by not putting an abundance of capital on an exchange that I can't assume is going to be there in a year. But I always state, even with anything I ever talk about, even in the setups I put out for altcoins, they're never leverage positions. It's long-term spots, or we're looking for key levels, buy and hold in spot, and look for targets. That's it. And if you get these flash crashes, they don't necessarily always affect you. Yes, the market may still be down by the time they even bounce back up, but you're still looking at like 15% down versus 80. And again, if you're looking at putting any leverage behind these, even a 2x obviously liquidated everybody that had anything along those lines. So let's take a look at a few things here, right? So now that just Bitcoin is pretty brief in my opinion. We came down, we hit a major target that we've been setting up for the last several months. Do I think it's going to go lower? Yes. I think that we're probably going to make our way down to that 97,000. The breaking of 100K, I think, is very likely in the following month. So that's just something to keep in the back of your mind when making any new, decisions. Does it have to hit? No, but it's very likely. And that's not just this setup, basing it off of the secondary target, again, that gold pocket area. That is still just putting this on the fact that we have an untapped high time frame average for the second 6 months of this year. So it's very likely we come down to that area in the second 6 months of this year. So meaning before the end of the year. So we got 2 months left. Does it have to happen? No. Is it probable? Yes. So that's just something that when we're building a strategy around these levels, that's what can happen. We could very well, zoom into the more local price action here on Bitcoin, right? And just even looking at a simple range that we're trading in for the last few months, that taking this back up to the high, which looks like we came right down to the low now that I'm looking at it. Okay, now that we're just trading around the low side here, we could very well just get that push back up into this region, probably around that 120 mark, put in a potential lower high. Doesn't have to be, but that's just at the moment. We have to be aware of that. We have put in now a lower low. You come up, you look for a lower high, and that could be something that leads us down to that secondary target area, meeting our high time frame average for the second part of this year, and then we will have to reevaluate at that point. Hard part is, and the thing that a lot of people get confused on, is when I point out certain things like this, it doesn't mean that that's going to happen tonight, tomorrow, this week. These are high time frame things I'm looking at the moment, especially on these Monday videos. That could be very well the next few weeks before we make our way down to that, right? And in that time, again, we just saw a huge liquidation event in the altcoins. Obviously, a lot of them have recovered to some degree, even if they're just recovered back to where they were. There's potential for a few other reasons that I think that the altcoins have some upside, and let's look at them. Back in the Discord again on the weekend, I was pointing out that crypto obviously got into extreme fear, which is generally when you want to, you see the blood in the street, right? So you want to be greedy when everybody's fearful, even if it's short term here when we look for bounces in the market. So that was obviously what we were dealing with. This was on, I think it was yesterday, so either Saturday or Sunday over the weekend. That obviously came in after Friday's drop. And we had things like Ethereum plunge all the way down. Again, really good example of how the price action can just snap back to these, they're not moving averages, they're high time frame averages of price. You see how well they're respected. This is actually the one that was left over from August, so a little bit behind us here, but we didn't come down to it officially down in this region. We pushed higher, higher, higher. You get this nice little market drop right down to that high time frame average to the dollar basically before you get that next bounce back. And now we're pretty much back to where we were trading at during Friday's drop, essentially, right before the overall pullback. ETH is now effectively down, about 15%, let's say 16 from the overall high. So again, things like this, unless you were looking to get a new purchase or a buy zone or anything like that, you're not down that full 30% that we wick down to at the moment, right? So, and same thing looks across the board at other altcoins. Truthfully, I still believe that Ethereum could push up to our next little target zone here, right? So, still looking for that. Is this not the best look at the moment as far as structural, structure would go? Yeah, technically we're looking like we're putting in, a little bit of a downtrend here. So just kind of a time to be aware. But for me, not really too over concerned. Again, with my spot bag holds of Ethereum, this is not somewhere where I have a leverage position opened or looking to get into one at this moment. Still looking for us to push up into this area though. Another big thing that I've been looking to, and I made a video dedicated to this, is the Bitcoin dominance. So when we pushed up to this region, we re-entered this old range that we've been trading in for years. This goes back to like 2018. And what I was looking for, I have not moved this at all. I know that's not that it's, again, I'm not trying to say like, oh, I put this here and it's got to go there. But that was the idea, is that we would push up, essentially putting in a lower high, all right, come back into the range again. And then this would set up a decent drawdown that not only would take dominance down, altcoins up, but look at the time frame here. Again, this is a weekly window I'm looking at, and potential for this to slowly grind down over the next coming really 2 years. Now, along the way, there's going to be bursts back up, right, where we get these pops back to the upside. That's generally not great for the altcoins in the short term, but this to me really could set off a move in the alts that I think that really takes us into next year to be a really big time for the altcoin. So something I'm really monitoring here as well. This could be something where Bitcoin doesn't even have to come back to an all-time high, where you get those moves in the altcoins where the money truly rotates into the altcoins for once and for all, right? Everybody's been waiting on it. I think everyone's pretty much now in a mental state where they think that the 4-year cycle topped and the bull run is over, and they're pretty frantically probably trying to get out of their altcoins. Again, do what is best for you. I've been 90% Ethereum for the last few years, so to me, I don't have the huge risk at the moment like I've had in the past, even myself, right, where you're holding things that have exploded 10 and 20 and 50x, and maybe they give it up. Granted, we don't have that right now across the board as it is anyways, but to me, I don't see Ethereum drawing back that crazy at the moment, so that's where my head's at. So I'm still anticipating ETH to outperform Bitcoin actually into the next coming year, and I'll kind of highlight that again as well. Bitcoin dominance aligns with that here. And again, number one setup, or the first setup I've really ever shared here on the DataDash channel when we were coming down and completing this. This is what kind of gave me the notion that ETH would outperform Bitcoin to begin with for a short period of time at least, which is when we came down to that $1,400 at the beginning of the year. We saw a huge move up in ETH versus BTC, which took up Ethereum over 250%. And we hit our head on a major target area and have now pulled back to our 382, holding it at the moment. So doesn't look too bad from here. And overall, I do anticipate that we'll see a push up into this next area going into December of 2026. So again, that means throughout the next few months into next year, the path that I anticipate is something along these lines. There's going to be pullbacks along the way, of course. And we all know how much a pullback can, really pull back. Even though we're where we were to where we got to, this small pullback, drops you 30%. So those do occur. Always another really great reminder that anytime anybody ever asks me, it's always like when we're pumping or the market seems like it's about to continue up and all these things, it really comes down to the risk management at hand. And I'm always going to say, never chase a pump. I don't care if something could still, like if I'm looking at something that's up 50% and I think it'll go up another 100, the risk of it coming down first, 30% is always greater in my experience than it potentially still pushing up higher from that exact entry. So I'm always looking for those big red days, and folks, as clear as day, we get them, right? They come all the time. There's never not going to be a red day. For the large caps, Solana, Ethereum, I'm always looking for a 15 to 20% pullback minimum for any kind of a new entry. 30% is ideal. And then for the altcoins, good Lord, 50% pullbacks happen like it's nothing, even during a bull market. Today's a bank holiday, but it looks like the stock market still is open here. So a lot of times we have those Friday dumps. Monday opens up green, right? So not extremely green at the moment, but definitely a little higher than where we closed off at. The Nasdaq, same way, looking like we're going to pump here. Gold is at new all-time highs yet again. What a time to be alive. And silver is pushing up as well. So the indices and the major market pieces seem to really not be too rattled. Precious metals seem to continually go up as that potential safe haven where everybody's rushing into. But realistically, everything is at all-time highs. And I say that in the sense, I know that not every single thing is, but most of the market, as far as the overall, are still trading really well. Bitcoin, could 126K be the top? I really think it has legs to be a top, and that's all I'll say, right? So personally, I don't really subscribe to the 4-year cycle anymore. I used to be a huge 4-year cycle guy. Last few years, I really thought that this would really end up being more so the final stages of the 20-year cycle based on the housing market, the economic cycle, the business cycle, and that crypto would be in there. And Bitcoin itself would actually be more so following the path of gold, as we got the ETF for gold back in 2004. Fast forward 20 years to 2024, Bitcoin gets its ETF. I think that the behavior here is going to be a little bit different. But in the interim, the short term here, I think Bitcoin gets a bounce back up to the 117. We're at like 115 now. 117, 120 area probably, holds that for a bit. I would say that it's likely as can be, very likely, it's not a guarantee, likely that we head back to 97,000 at least by the end of this year. So just be aware of that. And in the time between there, I think that the altcoins actually have a little, a poise for a little position here to move up a little bit more. So still really, I think that the dust needs to settle down a little bit from last weekend before we really get a good gauge on what we're going to see next year. I'm going to be taking a fresh look at a bunch of things tonight and tomorrow in the Discord and putting out a bunch of updates there. So if you're a member in there, be sure to keep your eyes out there. If you'd like to join, again, we've only got 250 more seats before we close the doors on that. And as always, folks, the markets are going to keep moving. Our job is to stay prepared and react. And again, if you'd like to stay ahead of these big swings and see my detailed chart updates and trade setups in real time, be sure to check out DataDash Pro Discord at datadashpro.com. This is where I post my market outlooks, educational content, weekly setups for members who want to dive deeper with me. I really appreciate you all for tuning in and supporting the channel. It means a lot. Be sure to stay patient, stay level-headed. As always, folks, I'll see you all in the next video. Until then, everyone, cheers.